Kidnapping is one of the darkest nightmares a person can face. It doesn't just steal your freedom, it steals your safety, your trust, and sometimes your will to live. Tonight on Bleeding Walls, we bring you 9 chilling true kidnapping horror stories. These aren't tales from movies or novels. These are accounts of real people who were taken, trapped, and pushed to the very edge of survival. Some escaped. Some were never seen the same way again. And each one of these stories will leave you questioning just how safe you really are when you step outside your door. So turn down the lights, keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't look away. Because what you're about to hear could happen to anyone, even you. If you're new here, welcome to Bleeding Walls. Make sure to subscribe because every week we bring you terrifying, true horror stories that will chill you to your core. Now let's begin. 1. The Van by the Park. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. Caroline, a 24-year-old graduate student, had just finished a long day of classes and decided to take a short walk through the neighborhood park near her apartment. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange, and she figured the fresh air would clear her head before she went home to study. She had walked that same path dozens of times before. It felt safe, at least it used to. The park was quiet that evening, unusually empty. She noticed a white van parked along the street by the playground. At first she thought nothing of it. Delivery vans were common in the area. But something about it nagged at her. The van had no company logo, the windows in the back were completely blacked out, and the engine was idling even though no one seemed to be inside. Caroline's instincts whispered for her to leave, but she brushed it off. She was being paranoid. She walked faster, clutching her bag, and was halfway past the van when it happened. The side door slid open with a violent screech. 2 men lunged out. Before she could scream, a rough hand clamped over her mouth. Another grabbed her arms, yanking her off her feet. She kicked, twisted, tried to bite, but they were stronger. The world spun as they dragged her inside the van, slamming the door shut behind her. The smell inside was overwhelming. Sweat, gasoline, and something rotten. Duct tape ripped, her wrists bound, a strip pressed over her mouth before she could cry out. Panic swallowed her. The van roared forward. Caroline's mind raced. She thought about her parents, her friends, her unfinished thesis. She thought about the fact that no one knew where she was. She hadn't told anyone she was going for a walk. If she disappeared, it would be hours before anyone noticed. The men didn't speak much. When they did, their voices were low, muffled, discussing where to take her. She caught fragments. The cabin, the boss, payment. Her stomach churned. After what felt like hours, the van jolted to a stop. The doors flew open and icy air hit her skin. She was hauled out, her legs scraping against gravel. When the blindfold was yanked over her eyes, she saw only flashes of pine trees, a dirt road, a shadowy cabin at the edge of the woods. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of mildew. They shoved her into a small room with no windows, just a mattress on the floor. They tied her to a pipe and left, the door slamming shut. For the first time, Carolyn allowed herself to cry. Silent, shaking sobs racked her chest. She didn't know what they wanted. Ransom, revenge, or something far worse? Hours blurred into a haze. Sometimes one of them would come in, bringing water or scraps of food. They never spoke to her directly, just muttered to each other. She overheard enough to piece together fragments of their plan. She wasn't their first victim, and she probably wouldn't be their last. On the 3rd night, one of the men, taller, meaner, entered the room alone. He crouched in front of her, his breath sour, and whispered, "No one's coming for you. People vanish all the time." He smiled, and her blood ran cold. That night, Caroline realized no one was going to save her. If she wanted to survive, she had to save herself. The next morning, when the smaller man came to untie her wrists long enough to let her eat, she noticed something. He never double-checked the knots. Her fingers worked quickly, memorizing the way the rope loosened with each tug. For 2 more days, she practiced in secret, pulling the ropes just enough to test them, then tightening them before anyone noticed. She waited, heart pounding for the right moment. It came on the 5th night. The men had been drinking, their laughter loud in the other room. Caroline slipped her hands free, peeled the tape from her mouth, and crept to the door. Her hand shook so violently she almost dropped the rusted metal bar she'd found, wedged under the mattress. She eased the door open. The cabin was dim, lit only by a flickering lamp. Both men were slumped at the table, bottles scattered around them. She stepped lightly, every creak of the floorboards echoing like thunder in her ears. When she reached the door, her hand froze on the lock. What if it squeaked? What if they woke? But hesitation would kill her. She twisted the lock, pushed the door, and bolted into the night. The forest was pitch black, branches tearing at her skin as she ran. Behind her she heard shouting. The men had noticed. Adrenaline fueled her legs. She didn't stop. Not when she tripped. Not when she fell. Not until she saw headlights in the distance, a car approaching on the dirt road. She threw herself into the path of the vehicle, waving frantically. The car screeched to a halt, and a couple leapt out, helping her inside as she sobbed. Incoherent. They called the police, and within hours the cabin was raided. The men were gone. The place was filled with evidence, clothing, jewelry, IDs of other victims. Caroline was one of the lucky ones. She had escaped, but not without scars. Even now, years later, she avoids parks, vans, and forest trails. She never walks alone at dusk. And sometimes, late at night, she dreams of the cabin, of the ropes, of the man's whisper. People vanish all the time. Because she knows if she hadn't fought back, she would have been one of them. 2. The ride that never ended. Liam was 19, a college freshman who had just finished his first semester. It was Christmas break, and he was working part-time at a grocery store to make some extra cash. Most nights he walked home. It was only 10 blocks. But that night, a heavy snowstorm had rolled in. The sidewalks were slick, the wind biting. When a dark sedan pulled up beside him and the driver rolled down the window, Liam hesitated. The man inside looked to be in his mid-30s, dressed neatly, his voice calm. "You heading east?" the man asked. "I can give you a lift. It's freezing out here." Normally Liam would have said no, but the storm was brutal, and the thought of trudging home in the ice made him pause. He got in. At first, everything seemed fine. The man introduced himself as Carl, asked about Liam's classes, even offered him a bottle of water from the console. But as the car continued down the road, Liam noticed something unsettling. They weren't going toward his neighborhood. "Hey, I think you missed the turn," Liam said lightly. Carl's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't answer. The car sped up. Liam's stomach dropped. He reached for the door handle, but the lock clicked down. Carl's voice was calm, almost soothing. "Relax. We're not going to your house." Panic clawed at Liam's throat. "Pull over." "Let me out," Carl chuckled softly. "You'll thank me later." The car left the city streets, weaving into darker, quieter roads until streetlights gave way to fields covered in snow. Liam's heart hammered. He tried to stay calm, watching for any sign of help, but the world outside was empty. Finally, the car stopped in front of a dilapidated farmhouse at the edge of the woods. The windows were boarded, the paint peeling. Carl turned to him, his smile unsettling. "Get out," he said simply. Liam's body froze. Why? Carl's voice hardened. Out! Terrified, Liam obeyed. His shoes crunched against the icy ground as Carl guided him toward the farmhouse. Inside, the air was stale, the rooms dark. In one corner, an old mattress lay on the floor, ropes coiled beside it. Liam's chest tightened. He realized with horror this wasn't random. Carl had done this before. Carl shoved him toward the mattress. Sit. For the first time in his life, Liam thought he might die. But adrenaline surged. Instead of sitting, he spun and shoved Carl as hard as he could. Carl stumbled backward, hitting the wall with a grunt. Liam bolted through the door, slipping on the ice, his lungs burning in the cold air. Carl's footsteps thundered behind him, his voice echoing. You'll never make it. But Liam didn't stop. He sprinted blindly into the woods, branches tearing at his face. His legs screamed, his chest ached, but he kept running until the trees thinned and he saw headlights on a distant road. Bursting out of the forest, he waved frantically at a passing truck. The driver braked hard, jumping out as Liam collapsed, gasping, begging for help. By the time police searched the farmhouse, it was empty. Carl had vanished. But inside they found signs that Liam wasn't the first. Scraps of clothing, personal belongings, even Polaroids of terrified faces. Liam survived, but the nightmares never left. He stopped accepting rides, stopped walking alone at night. Every time he sees a dark sedan, his heart skips, because Carl was never caught. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, Liam wakes with the sound of his voice echoing in his ears. You'll thank me later. 3. The Babysitter's Trap. Emily was 17, a high school senior saving money for college by babysitting on weekends. The Johnsons were her regular clients, a kind couple with 2 kids who adored her. One Friday night, they had asked her to come over, same as usual. She arrived around 6, played board games with the kids, made popcorn, and tucked them in by 9. The Johnsons left her with their usual instructions. Lock the doors, don't answer the phone if it's strange, and call us if anything happens. Nothing unusual. Emily had babysat dozens of times without incident. But that night, something felt off. Around 10:30, the doorbell rang. Emily froze. No one had said they were expecting company. She crept to the peephole and saw a man standing on the porch. He was tall, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, his hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. Who is it? Emily called nervously. The man's voice was calm. I'm here to check the electricity. I got a call about a power issue. Emily frowned. There was no problem with the power. The lights worked fine. Sorry, you've got the wrong house, she said firmly, backing away. For a few minutes there was silence. She thought he had left. But then the doorknob rattled. The man was testing it. Her heart slammed in her chest. She grabbed her phone and dialed the Johnsons, whispering what happened. They told her to stay calm, lock the doors, and call the police if he didn't leave. But by the time she hung up, the man was gone. Relief washed over her until she heard it. A soft creak upstairs. Her blood turned to ice. The kids were asleep up there. Someone was inside the house. Emily grabbed a kitchen knife and tiptoed toward the staircase. Every shadow seemed alive. She forced herself to be quiet, listening. Another creak. Closer this time. The sound of footsteps in the hallway above. The man hadn't left. He had broken in. Her first thought was the children. She ran upstairs, heart pounding, and burst into the kids' room. They were asleep, unharmed. She locked the door behind her and called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher told her to stay put, that officers were on their way. But the sound of footsteps outside the door told her she didn't have much time. The knob turned slowly. Then a voice, the same calm tone from before. Emily, open the door. I don't want to hurt you. Tears filled her eyes. She held the knife tighter, pressing the kids close. The man jiggled the knob harder, then slammed his shoulder into the door. The wood cracked. Emily screamed into the phone, begging the dispatcher to hurry. The kids were crying now, clutching her arms. Another slam. The door shuddered. It wouldn't hold much longer. Then, in the distance, sirens. The man froze. For a moment, silence. Then footsteps retreating down the hall, the creak of a window opening. By the time police stormed the house, he was gone. They searched the property and found evidence he had been watching the family for weeks. Footprints under the kids' windows, cigarette butts, and even rope hidden in the bushes. Emily had saved the children, but the horror lingered. She couldn't shake the image of that calm voice whispering through the door. She quit babysitting after that night, and even years later she still wakes from dreams of footsteps on the stairs and the sound of wood splintering under a stranger's shoulder, because she knows if the police had been even a minute later, the story would have ended very differently. 4. The gas station stranger. It was nearly midnight when Rachel pulled into the only gas station on the highway. She had been driving for hours, heading back to her college dorm after visiting family for the weekend. The road was empty, the sky pitch black, and her tank dangerously close to empty. The station looked run down, its flickering neon sign buzzing faintly. Only one other vehicle sat in the lot, a battered pickup truck parked by the side. Rachel got out, shivering in the cold night air, and began pumping gas. That's when she noticed him, a man leaning against the pickup, watching her. He was tall, with greasy hair tucked under a cap, his face hidden in shadow. His eyes never left her. Rachel's stomach tightened. She tried to ignore him, focusing on the numbers ticking on the pump, but then he called out, "Long night, huh?" His tone was casual, but something about it made her skin crawl. She forced a polite smile, muttering, "Yeah," and turned back to her car. When the pump clicked, she quickly replaced the nozzle and climbed into the driver's seat. But before she could lock the doors, the man was suddenly there, rapping on her window. She jumped. "Sorry to scare you," he said with a crooked grin. "Truck's not starting." "You think you could give me a ride down the road?" Rachel shook her head. "Sorry, I can't." His grin faltered. His voice hardened. "It's just a couple miles. Won't take long." Her pulse spiked. She muttered no again, fumbling to start her car. His expression darkened. He stepped back, eyes narrowing as she pulled away. Relief washed over her until she glanced in her mirror. The pickup's headlights flared to life. Her heart dropped. She pressed harder on the accelerator, her little sedan rattling as the truck tailed her closely, its high beams blinding. For miles, he followed. Every time she switched lanes, he did too. Every attempt to shake him failed. The highway stretched on endlessly, no exits, no other cars, just the roar of engines in the dark. Rachel's chest tightened. She spotted a green sign ahead. "Rest stop, 2 miles." Her only chance. She floored it, racing toward the exit. The truck sped up too, its engine growling behind her. She swerved into the rest stop, tires screeching, and spotted a cluster of parked semi-trucks. Without thinking, she pulled up alongside one, blasting her horn. The sound startled the truckers, who stepped out, blinking in confusion. Rachel leapt from her car, screaming, "Help! He's trying to kill me!" The pickup screeched to a halt at the edge of the lot. The man stepped out, glaring at her, then at the truckers, now converging, fists clenched. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, without a word, he climbed back into his truck and sped off into the night. Rachel collapsed, shaking, as the truckers called the police. Officers arrived an hour later, but the pickup was gone. They searched the area, finding nothing, but the rest stop security cameras had captured his license plate. When police traced it, they discovered the man was wanted for multiple kidnappings across state lines. Victims had vanished from gas stations, parking lots, and lonely highways. Rachel had narrowly escaped becoming the next. Even now she avoids stopping at night, her tank always full before long trips, because she can still see his face reflected in her window, hear the echo of his voice. It's just a couple miles. Won't take long, and she knows if not for the truckers that night, she would never have made it home. 5. The apartment invite. Megan was 22, new to the city, and had just started her first job as a graphic designer. On a Friday night, her coworker suggested grabbing a few drinks at a nearby bar. Megan hesitated. She didn't know anyone outside the office, but the thought of socializing and relaxing after a long week convinced her to go. At the bar, she met Darren, a friendly guy, with an easy smile and a charming laugh. They bonded over music and art, exchanging stories about their favorite films and childhood memories. As the night wore on, Darren suggested they continue the evening at his apartment nearby. Megan, trusting her instincts and feeling comfortable, agreed. At first, Darren's apartment seemed normal, clean, tidy, dimly lit, with music playing softly in the background. They sat on the couch, chatting, sharing wine, and laughing. Megan thought she'd made a new friend, maybe more. But after a while, she noticed little things that made her uneasy. The way Darren's gaze lingered, the way he subtly guided her toward the corner of the room, and the odd arrangement of photographs on his walls. He had photos of women, all strangers, posed in his apartment, seemingly unaware they were being photographed. Their expressions were neutral, almost blank. Megan's stomach churned. "I take pictures of things I like," Darren said suddenly, noticing her glance at the photos. "People, places, moments. It's an art, you know?" Megan forced a smile, nodding politely. Something about the casual way he spoke made her uneasy, but she brushed it off, thinking she was overreacting. Hours passed, and Darren's behavior became more controlling. When Megan tried to stand, he subtly blocked her path, insisting she stay seated. She laughed nervously, trying to keep the mood light, but the tension in the room grew. Finally, she decided to leave. "I think I should head home," she said, standing and gathering her things. Darren's smile froze. "No. You're staying? It's late and the city isn't safe." Megan's heart raced. "I can handle myself." "I really need to go." Darren's tone shifted, soft, almost threatening. "You don't understand. Out there, anything could happen. Here, you're safe." The unease in her chest turned to terror. She realized that leaving wasn't an option. The door had been locked subtly when she wasn't looking, and now it wouldn't budge. Panic surged. She tried to call her phone, but Darren snatched it from her hand before she could dial. "You don't need this," he whispered, inching closer. Megan backed up, trying to stay calm, but her mind raced with escape plans. Suddenly, Darren's expression softened. "I just want you to understand. I like to keep people safe. People disappear outside my but here, you're mine." That's when Megan understood. He wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. For the next 2 hours, she watched for any opportunity. Darren left briefly to answer a knock at the door, a neighbor perhaps. Megan used the moment, testing the door. The lock clicked, unlocked. Adrenaline surged. She slipped out into the hallway and sprinted down the stairwell, heart pounding. Once outside, she didn't stop running until she reached a lit street and flagged down a taxi. She never looked back. The next morning, she called the police and returned with them to Darren's apartment. The place was immaculate, eerily so. There were signs he had been planning, maps, notes about schedules, and more photographs. Evidence suggested he had held other women there before. Megan had escaped, but the horror lingered. She quit the bar, deleted social media accounts, and avoided meeting anyone new alone. Every time she hears footsteps behind her in a hallway or sees someone lingering near a door, her chest tightens. And in the quiet moments when she tries to sleep, she can still see Darren's calm, predatory smile and hear the whisper that nearly trapped her forever. Here, you're safe. Mine. 6. The ride-hailing nightmare. Jacob was 25 and had been working late at the tech startup downtown. It was nearly midnight when he finally left the office, exhausted and eager to get home. With public transport long gone, he opened a ride-hailing app and requested a car. The wait was short, and a dark sedan pulled up within minutes. The driver was polite, introducing himself as Mark. Jacob gave his address and they started down the familiar route. The ride seemed normal at first. Mark made small talk, asking about Jacob's work, his hobbies, even commenting on the late-night traffic. Jacob relaxed, thinking the man was friendly. But minutes in, he noticed something odd. The car didn't take the usual route to his apartment. Instead, Mark turned down a series of unfamiliar streets, darker, narrower, and mostly deserted. "Hey, I think you missed a turn," Jacob said casually, trying not to panic. Mark glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his expression calm but his eyes unnervingly sharp. "No, I know a faster route." Jacob tried to stay calm. I don't think this is the way." Mark's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Relax. You'll see. It's better this way." The words didn't reassure Jacob. He reached for his phone to call someone, but the signal was gone. Panic surged. He tried the door handle, but it was locked automatically. Jacob's heart pounded. He knew something was very wrong. The car veered onto a deserted stretch of road lined with trees so dense that even the streetlights seemed swallowed by darkness. The engine hummed steadily, masking the sound of Jacob's frantic breathing. "Where are you taking me?" he demanded. Mark didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, his lips pressing into a thin line. The car slowed as they approached an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Jacob's stomach turned over. The sedan pulled up beside the building, and before Jacob could react, Mark opened the door and grabbed him, forcing him out. The cold night air bit at his skin as he struggled, but Mark was strong. He shoved Jacob inside the warehouse, slamming the door behind him. Inside, the air was thick and damp, smelling of mildew and rust. Old crates lined the walls, and the only light came from a flickering bulb overhead. Jacob's wrists were bound with zip ties, and Mark's expression was calm, almost methodical. "You're safe," Mark said quietly, his words chilling. "You just need to stay here until I'm done." Jacob's mind raced. What did he want? Money? Revenge? He had no idea. But instinct screamed at him that the only way out was to act. Over the next several hours, Mark came and went, leaving Jacob alone at times. The warehouse was silent except for the occasional creak of the building settling. Jacob studied his surroundings, memorizing every detail. He noticed a loose board near the corner and tested it with his foot. It shifted slightly. Adrenaline fueled his determination. When Mark returned with a flashlight and a clipboard, Jacob pretended to be panicked, begging to go home. Mark, distracted by filling out notes, didn't notice Jacob loosening his bindings with careful, quiet movements. Finally, as Mark walked toward the exit, Jacob freed his hands completely and crept toward the board. It covered a small ventilation duct. He squeezed inside, wriggling through the tight space, his heart racing. The cold metal scraped his skin, but he pushed forward inch by inch until he emerged outside into the night air. The city lights were faint in the distance, but freedom was near. Jacob sprinted toward the nearest highway, dodging trees and debris. He flagged down a passing car, gasping for breath and begging for help. The driver didn't hesitate, calling the police while keeping him safe. By the time officers arrived, the warehouse was empty. Mark had vanished without a trace. Inside, they found evidence of previous victims: discarded personal items, torn clothing, and photographs documenting his captives. Jacob survived, but the experience left permanent scars. He stopped using ride-hailing apps late at night, always walked in groups, and sleeps with his doors locked. Sometimes he dreams of the warehouse, the duct, and Mark's calm, methodical gaze. Even years later, he feels a jolt of fear whenever a dark sedan passes by, or when a driver asks him for directions, because he knows, just as clearly as he knew that night, if he hadn't acted fast, he would have become another victim in Mark's chilling collection. 7. The Apartment Stalker. Samantha had recently moved into a new apartment in the city. It was small, cozy, and within walking distance to her office, making it perfect for her first independent living experience. She loved the independence, but living alone also meant she had to be vigilant. She never imagined that vigilance would save her life. It started with small things. A note slipped under her door that simply read, "I see you." She dismissed it as a prank from a neighbor or an anonymous admirer. Then came the subtle sounds at night, the faint creak of footsteps outside her door, the occasional shadow glimpsed through the blinds. She tried to rationalize it, telling herself it was just her imagination. One evening, Samantha returned from work and noticed a man standing across the street, leaning against a lamp post. She didn't recognize him, and when he noticed her looking, he smiled, then disappeared into the darkness. Her chest tightened, but she convinced herself it was coincidence. A week later, she was returning from the grocery store when she found her apartment door slightly ajar. She had locked it before leaving. Panic surged. She slipped inside, checking every corner. Nothing seemed disturbed, but the air felt heavier, oppressive. That night she slept with her phone in her hand. The following day, her building's front security camera footage showed a man entering the lobby around the time she left for work. He walked straight to her floor, waited outside her apartment, and then left, just before she returned. Her blood ran cold. She reported it to the building management and the police. They promised to increase patrols and check the cameras, but the sense of being watched didn't leave her. She began noticing him in other places: the grocery store, the park, near her apartment, even the coffee shop she visited every morning. Then one Friday evening, everything escalated. Samantha was cooking dinner when she heard a faint tapping on her window. She ignored it at first, but then the tapping became louder, more deliberate. Fear gripped her, and she called the police. Moments later, she heard a soft click from the front door. Someone was trying to pick the lock. Her heart raced. She barricaded the door with a chair and crouched in the corner, dialing 911. By the time the police arrived, the intruder had vanished. However, in the living room, they found evidence that chilled Samantha to her core. A small notebook containing detailed notes about her routines, habits, and even the layout of her apartment. It was clear he'd been stalking her for weeks, planning something sinister. The next few nights were sleepless. Samantha set up additional locks, installed cameras, and even moved her bed away from the window. She became hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow, but the fear never completely left her. Then came the night she almost became his victim. Samantha had gone out to a nearby convenience store. On her return, she noticed a man waiting near the entrance of her building. Panic surged, but she tried to act normal, hoping he would leave. Instead, he followed her inside, casually passing other tenants to reach her floor. Her adrenaline spiked. She darted into the stairwell, trying to make it to the lobby without being noticed. The man was quick, gaining on her, but she managed to reach the lobby and trigger the building alarm. Security rushed out, and the man fled into the night. The police later confirmed that the man had a history of abducting women he stalked. Samantha's quick thinking had saved her life. They intensified surveillance, and she moved out of the apartment shortly after. Even now, she carries the memory of those nights, the suffocating fear, the sound of someone watching, and the knowledge that if she'd been just a few seconds slower, she might have disappeared forever. She changed her routines, keeps her doors locked, and avoids familiar paths at night. Because Samantha knows firsthand that stalking isn't just scary, it can be deadly. And the terror of nearly being kidnapped never truly leaves. 8. The Hotel Room Trap. Olivia was 23 and had just landed a new job in a city several hours from her hometown. To celebrate her first week, she decided to treat herself to a weekend getaway at a small hotel downtown. She had stayed in hotels before, and everything seemed routine: check-in, swipe card, elevator to the third floor, room 312. The room was cozy, with soft lighting and a view of the city skyline. Olivia unpacked, ordered room service, and settled in with a book. The evening was quiet, peaceful, that is, until she noticed a man in the hallway outside her door. At first she thought it was a guest or hotel staff, but when he lingered near her door, pretending to be checking his phone, a chill ran down her spine. She dismissed it, telling herself she was being paranoid. But then strange things began happening inside the room. Her key card stopped working. The phone line went dead, and when she checked the peephole, she could swear the man outside was smiling at her. The anxiety gnawed at her. She tried calling the front desk from her cell phone, but there was no signal. The hotel was in the middle of the city, yet somehow her phone showed no service. Panic set in. Hours passed. Olivia tried to remain calm, hiding behind the door whenever the man approached. She watched as he jiggled the handle, seemingly patient but persistent. Her mind raced. Was this a random criminal or someone specifically targeting her? Then the door clicked, slowly, deliberately. Olivia froze. The man stepped inside carrying a small toolkit. He smiled faintly as though he had rehearsed this moment countless times. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I just want to talk." Olivia's heart pounded. She backed away, her eyes scanning the room for anything she could use to defend herself. But the man was fast, closing the distance in a few strides. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the bed. Adrenaline surged. Olivia twisted, elbowing him in the stomach, and ran to the window. It was locked, but she smashed it with a lamp, shards of glass scattering across the carpet. She tried to climb onto the fire escape, but her ankle twisted, sending her crashing to the floor. The man lunged, but Olivia managed to grab a chair, swinging it with all her strength. It connected, and he staggered back. She bolted toward the door, but it slammed shut behind him, locking automatically. Her panic reached a fever pitch. Hours seemed to pass like days. Olivia hid under the bed, clutching her phone and praying. She listened to his footsteps, the soft laughter, the whispers through the cracked door. It was clear he had done this before. He knew exactly how to instill terror. Finally, in the early morning, Olivia heard sirens in the distance. The man cursed and fled, vanishing into the city streets. Hotel security arrived minutes later, unlocking the door and calling the police. They searched the room and surrounding floors, finding evidence that he had targeted multiple guests, breaking into rooms, disabling phones, and meticulously planning abductions. Olivia survived, but the trauma lingered. She never stayed in a hotel alone again. Every unfamiliar face in a hallway, every lingering shadow outside a door, sent her heart racing. The city, once full of promise, now felt like a maze of potential threats. Even years later, the memory of that night haunted her. She could still see his face, the calm, practiced smile, the patience in his eyes, the knowledge that he could strike again. And she understood something chilling. Sometimes survival depends not just on luck, but on instinct, courage, and the will to fight against a predator who thrives on fear. 9. The Stranger on the Trail. Marcus had always been an outdoor enthusiast. On a crisp autumn morning, he decided to go for a solo hike on a trail about an hour from the city. The forest was quiet, the leaves crunching underfoot, the air filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. He carried only a backpack with essentials and a fully charged phone, confident in his experience. The trail was mostly empty, which Marcus enjoyed. He liked the solitude, the chance to think without interruption. But after about an hour, he noticed a figure in the distance, a man walking in the same direction. At first, it seemed coincidental, but as Marcus progressed, he realized the man was matching his pace, always a few dozen meters behind him, never overtaking, never veering off. A shiver ran down his spine. He tried to ignore it, rationalizing that the man was probably just another hiker. Yet the further he walked, the closer the man seemed to get without breaking stride. Marcus decided to quicken his pace. He switched paths, taking a steeper, less traveled trail. The man followed. Anxiety replaced caution. Marcus checked his phone. Battery full, signal strong. He could call for help if needed. But as he dialed 911, the man stepped from the underbrush, blocking the signal with some kind of small jammer device Marcus hadn't noticed before. "Going somewhere?" the man asked, calm, almost polite. Marcus froze. His instincts screamed to run, but the man was fast, stepping closer. He noticed the backpack, everything Marcus had with him, his only means of defense. The man grabbed it, ripping it from his shoulders. Marcus's pulse raced. "You shouldn't be alone," the stranger whispered. His voice was unsettlingly calm, like someone who had rehearsed this moment countless times. Marcus tried to push him away, but the man was stronger. He grabbed Marcus's arm, yanking him off the trail and into a dense thicket of trees. The forest became a blur of branches, leaves scratching his skin, dirt underfoot, the smell of damp earth choking him. He struggled violently, trying to break free. Hours, or maybe minutes, time felt distorted, passed as the man dragged him through the woods. Eventually, they reached a small clearing hidden from any possible path or sight. There, a rusted shipping container sat, almost invisible among the trees. Marcus's stomach turned over. He knew instinctively this was a trap, a place designed to hold someone captive. Inside, the container was dark, cold, and oppressive. The man bound Marcus's hands with rope, leaving him shivering and desperate. The stranger's calm demeanor never wavered. "You're safe here," he said softly, though there was nothing reassuring in his tone. "No one will find you. Unless you try something." Marcus's mind raced. He had to escape. Panic gave way to strategy. He studied the container, noticing small gaps between the rusted metal sheets, a weak latch on the door, the way the rope was tied. Every detail became a potential avenue for survival. Days seemed to pass. The man would bring water and minimal food, always careful not to speak too much. Marcus learned the rhythm of his captor, memorized the movements, the times when he left the container unattended. Every day he tested the ropes, stretching the bounds, learning where the knots would give way. Finally, on the fourth night, the opportunity came. The man had left the door ajar slightly, distracted by some task outside. Marcus worked quickly, slipping free from the rope, careful to avoid any sudden noises. The cold air outside hit him like a wave, but he didn't hesitate. He sprinted into the forest, branches whipping at his face, the sound of his own frantic breathing and pounding heartbeat in his ears. He ran blindly, guided by instinct, and the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the canopy. After what felt like an eternity, he broke through the trees and stumbled onto a narrow dirt road. Exhausted, bleeding from minor cuts, but alive, he flagged down a passing motorist. The driver called the police immediately. Marcus barely spoke coherently, his words jumbled in fear and relief. Officers arrived, searching the area and the shipping container, but the man had vanished into the darkness. Inside, they found remnants of past victims, personal items, clothing, and even a journal detailing abductions and strategies for keeping people trapped. Marcus realized he had narrowly escaped a fate that had befallen others before him. The trauma didn't end there. Even months later, Marcus found himself avoiding trails, forests, and any secluded outdoor area. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow in the corner of his vision sent shivers down his spine. Sleep came with nightmares of rope, darkness, and the stranger's calm, precise movements. He shared his story with authorities, who issued warnings to hikers in the area, but the fear remained deeply personal. Marcus had learned a harsh truth. Danger can hide anywhere, even in places that seem serene and familiar. And sometimes, survival hinges on recognizing the threat, trusting your instincts, and seizing the slightest opportunity to escape. For Marcus, that night would never be forgotten. The forest, the shipping container, and the stranger's voice, echoing in his mind, served as a constant reminder of how close he came to vanishing forever.